threats are hours away from becoming reality, including the latest tit-for-tat levies on Chinese goods, which at midnight will bring tariffs on Chinese products entering the U.S. to a cumulative 104%. And with the clock also ticking down on President Trump's across-the-board tariff against dozens of other countries, the White House is signaling there are potential deals to be made, saying many of those countries are already reaching out. A wave of optimism sent markets soaring at the open before a days-long sell-off resumed. The Dow losing 320 points for the day, losses 2 for the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500, which closed below 5,000 for the first time in nearly a year. Once again, Christine Roman starts us off.
Tonight, more whiplash on Wall Street. The Dow up nearly 1,500 points before closing down 320, and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ down too. All as we're hours away from a new round of President Trump's tariffs on imported goods.
We've been ripped off and abused by countries for many years with the tariff situation. They've used tariffs against us.
Though the White House says it's open to negotiation for countries looking to lower new U.S. tariffs for their products, saying 70 countries have reached out so far.
Bring us your best offers, and he will listen. Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits.
Now it's a global scramble to stop potentially disruptive border taxes.
We're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals. Right now, Japan is flying here to make a deal. South Korea is flying here to make a deal, and others are flying here.
But tonight, that trade war with China still flaring, following tariffs and retaliation on both sides. After midnight, China will face a 104% border fee on its goods to the U.S. China's foreign ministry calling it bullying and blackmail.
I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation.
The Treasury Secretary urged countries not to retaliate if they want a deal.
Don't escalate, and then we will see where President Trump is after a period of days or weeks.
Tonight, most Republicans backing the president's efforts to bring back American jobs.
This has been a tilted playing field for a long time. The president's trying to even it out, and I think he's doing the right thing.
But Democrats warning the president's action could trigger a recession.
Donald Trump should immediately reverse his reckless trade war.
And tonight, new signs of division in the administration after these comments from top trade advisor Peter Navarro about Elon Musk.
Elon's a car manufacturer, but he's not a car manufacturer. He's a car assembler. He wants the cheap foreign parts, and we understand that, but we want him home.
Musk, who has voiced skepticism about tariffs, fired back, calling Navarro a moron, posting, "What he says here is demonstrably false. Tesla has the most American-made cars. Navarro is dumber than a sack of bricks." The White House on the feud today.
Look, these are obviously two individuals who have very different views on trade and on tariffs. Boys will be boys, and we will let their public sparring continue.
And back to the markets, Christine. This has been a very tough few days.
Yeah, Lester, in just 4 days, the Standard&Poor's 500 has tumbled more than 11%. It's now the lowest in a year. Investors rattled by all these new tariffs that start in just a few hours. And consumers likely to begin feeling higher costs within weeks, Lester.
And it's pretty clear by those swings we saw in the market today, Wall Street is still holding out hope for a deal soon.
Absolutely. Investors are desperate for this turmoil over tariffs to be resolved, and they will likely latch on to any kind of a sign, which is why sometimes they magnify even the smallest signals from this administration, Lester.
Christine Romans, thanks. And for more on the impact of the tariffs, I'm joined by Tom Yamas. And Tom, experts say the prices on everything from cars to toys could go up.
That's right, Lester. If tariff fees are fully pushed on consumers, the price tag for, say, sneakers made in Vietnam could jump 40%. An iPhone could spike $350. So tonight, we thought we'd take a closer look at a single product, Nintendo's hugely anticipated Switch 2 console, set for release June 5th. Nintendo has already sold 150 million Switches. The new version would be the first major gaming release since the tariff announcement. Pre-orders were supposed to start tomorrow, but instead the company hit the pause button. They decided to assess the potential impact.
They got to figure out what they're going to get charged. Do they charge 50% more? Do they charge double? Do they even ship them?
The current price for the new Nintendo Switch, $449. Ironically, to keep prices down, Nintendo had moved some of its Switch 2 production to Vietnam because of earlier tariffs on China. But Vietnam is now facing its own 46% tariff.
How much of this is made in the U.S.? None of it.
None of it. And the reality is, for these tariffs, it is a gut punch for every electronic. Nintendo being the first case because they're early in terms of the Switch. This is basically an economic Armageddon coming to tech.
Ives says moving production to the U.S. isn't a realistic option.
How much would it cost them to start manufacturing Switches here in the U.S.?
Tens of billions of dollars.
Billions? That's because of a supply chain that's been built over decades.
It would take 4 to 5 years to even build and get done a factory here in the U.S. And the reality is the assembly, the supply chain's in Asia. If you just build a factory here in the U.S., where are you getting all the parts from? Still in Asia.
Nintendo says it remains on track for a June 5th release.
In your estimation, how much of what we buy is going to go up?
90% of what we buy as consumers living in the United States is going to go up. And I think the U.S. consumer doesn't realize the storm that's coming, but they'll be seeing it over the coming weeks and months in those prices.
Tom, this is fascinating, but there's a big caveat here.
Yeah, Lester, there is a big caveat, and that's that the president has the power to exempt companies from those tariffs. It happened in the first Trump term. It's unclear if it'll happen in this term. It hasn't happened yet, but he does have the power to impose tariffs, but also to exempt some companies.
All right, Tom Yamas, thanks. Tonight, a desperate search for survivors after a roof collapse at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic. Dozens are dead, including a former Major League Baseball player. More than 160 people injured. Priscilla Thompson has late details.